What's up? It's Marty 1983 and you are in the Nerd Nest. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. This is my first video of 2026. I'm sorry I didn't do it earlier, but I've been busy with my my family's been here, and I've been struggling with a little personal issues. Most notably, I lost my job due to the store I worked at closing at the end of the year. I'll find another job, though. I'm already looking. And I've recovered enough to make this video. I'll be doing a game show review before the month ends, and I'm also going to try and talk about other things, nerdy and non-nerdy. In this video, I'm actually going to be talking about current world affairs. The United States of America, sadly, may be on its last legs. The whole world is pretty much united against us thanks to Darth Orange Ass, and I really don't think we can ever recover from him, even though I do think the election was stolen. I check out Election Truth Alliance and follow their channel. Unfortunately, most of the world has pretty much sworn off the United States forever. No more tourism, no more buying American goods, no more enjoying American entertainment, yada yada yada. And they may not even tolerate our existence anymore. I think Al-Qaeda is more popular than we are. Therefore, I came up with the only thing I can think of so Americans won't be hated by the world. If there is no more United States to hate. In other words, the United States would be split into smaller nations like the Soviet Union was in 1991. Why? Well, there's several reasons. I think the cultural and political differences have become too great that staying together would be dangerous for the world and for us as people. Especially since he who must not be named has basically declared war on anyone and everyone who opposes him, such as what's happening in Minneapolis right now. They're actually having a general strike there, and I stand with you guys. Fight the power, baby. Anyway, if you look at our history, to be honest, the United States has never really been a clearly unified nation. We actually began our existence as 13 colonies of the British Empire that rebelled against the Crown because of our dislike of King George III's excessive taxation, among other grievances. In fact, you could basically say the Declaration of Independence was the original airing of grievances long before Festivus and Seinfeld. Well, 250 years later, not much else has changed, even though the country has grown in size, in population, and stature. It's actually a miracle that our union survived as long as it has, as there's been several close calls during the country's existence, such as the War of 1812, and especially during the Civil War. The cracks have always been there, but I think the election was stolen. I think the election the stolen election of Mango Mussolini made the cracks a lot wider. Anyway, the name of the United States is kind of a misnomer. The word state is pretty much synonymous with the word nation. The United States of America, it actually describes a political union rather than the name of a state/nation per se. These are all the result of the original United States being thought of as a loose coalition of the former 13 colonies, with the states being the primary powers and the federal government being much less relevant. Something that can throw a lot of foreign visitors and many Americans off, as well as the fact that the individual state governments have a lot more autonomy and jurisdiction over their affairs than in other countries. For example, marijuana is technically illegal under federal law, but there are several states, with Washington and Colorado being the vanguards, where marijuana is sold and licensed in retail shops, and it's currently legal for recreational use in at least half the country. And it's allowed for medicinal use in 15 other states as well. Anyway, this patchwork of state laws creates plenty of business headaches for the federal court system, which sometimes has to decide which state's laws trumps the other, no pun intended. In the years following the American Revolution, the new country was constantly on the verge of coming apart, actually. The Articles of Confederation had ensured that the states had most of the governing power, and Congress was too weak to keep them from competing against each other. This ultimately led to the Articles of Confederation being replaced by the Constitution, delegating more powers to a stronger federal government, much to the state's chagrin. One of the biggest reasons for this struggle was Vice President Aaron Burr, the third vice president under Thomas Jefferson, and he was believed to be behind secessionist movements in both New York and in the Southwest Territory south of the Ohio River and east of the Mississippi River, and north of the southern coast along the Gulf of Mexico. This was called the Burr Conspiracy. This led to Alexander Hamilton to start a smear campaign against Burr that sabotaged his efforts at becoming governor of New York once his vice president term ended. And this, of course, resulted in Hamilton being killed in that famous duel in 1804. 3 years later, President Thomas Jefferson had Burr arrested for treason, destroying his political career and prompting him to go into self-imposed exile in England, where he died in 1836. Of course, the legality of secession itself is still something of a gray area. On one hand, all 13 of the original colonies predate the United States by definition, since it was these states which ratified the Constitution and brought the federal government into existence. Under what's called the compact theory of government, any state can lawfully secede from the Union if the state legislature decides to do so. On the other hand, the Civil War kind of made it clear that on the topic of secession, might makes right, and the Supreme Court additionally ruled in Texas v. White in 1869 that unilateral secession is verboten, though revolution or consent of the states could lead to a successful secession. Fun fact, the Confederate Constitution made it clear that the Confederacy wouldn't look too kindly on states attempting to secede from it, though Georgia came close to trying during the 4 years the Confederacy existed. Of course, this is still up to dispute to many of us Americans to this day. And now, with the United States more divided and hated by the world than ever, maybe it is time to bring the Union to an end. Whether or not it happens is unknown, but no one thought the Soviet Union would have disappeared until it actually did. So why couldn't it happen to the United States? Well, there are many parallels between the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1980s and 90s and the United States in the 21st century, such as political polarization, instability, massive debt, inflation, income inequality, and having a vast global military empire, and of course there's the current social unrest in the U.S. As you might expect, this is just my own opinion, and this is not necessarily to be taken seriously. Whether you want to is up to you, but I'm just venting how I feel. Enough talk. I'm going to discuss how I would split the United States into several smaller nations. Here is my map, as you can see, and I will be going into detail for the 6 nations that are formed from the lower 48, leaving out Alaska, Hawaii, and all of the other overseas territories such as Puerto Rico. They would all most likely end up becoming independent nations, or maybe even get annexed by other nations. For example, Alaska would either be taken back by Russia or, more hopefully, Canada. Since I have a family in Alaska still, I would not mind if Canada took over Alaska. Now, of course, this assumes that the split would be among existing state lines. It may or may not, but we're just going to say it will for simplicity's sake. And in each map that I'm talking about, I'll mention the states that will make up the new nation, along with their populations, their national capitals, area size, current GDP, and their economic sectors. I also considered 3 things when I formed these new nations, such as geography, politics, and cultural ties. Since the U.S. was never really a clearly unified nation with a homogeneous culture, that was not easy to do, but I think I did okay here. With that in mind, we will start with the Republic of Pacifica. As you can see, the Republic will be made of 4 states: Oregon, California, Washington, and Nevada. The population of all 4 of these states would be 54,929,281, and this is based on the 2025 U.S. Census estimate, because they do the census every 10 years, but they have this is according to the mid-decade estimate. The national capital will be in San Francisco. Of course, all of the state capitals will still remain. The area size is over 444,000 square feet, and the GDP would be pretty good size, $5.55 trillion. Of course, a new currency would have to be created for all these new nations, but we'll get into that. We're not going to get into that. The economic sectors, of course, are entertainment, because you got Hollywood, and of course you got Las Vegas. Technology, Silicon Valley, Seattle, and the Portland, Oregon area is no slouch either. Agriculture, there's a lot of agricultural growth in California and Oregon too, and Washington. Anyway, tourism, of course, is a big thing. It was until recently, but it would be big again. Mining, there's a lot of mining in the mountains. Finance, there's a lot of banks. Wells Fargo is based in San Francisco. Manufacturing, not as much as some of the other parts of the country, but it's there. Energy, they'd probably be focused on more environmentally friendly energy in this part of the
the former Union. And, of course, education. Stanford University, UCLA, University of Washington, Oregon. There's a lot of good schools up there. So the Republic of Pacifica would be one of the, it'd be the land, it would be very prosperous. But, I mean, yes, there are some problems in these states now, but at least if they were independent, they could handle them better than they do with the federal government breathing down its neck. All right, now we move on to our next new nation, and that would be the Rocky Mountain Republic, Rocoso for short. Rocoso is Spanish for Rocky. Anyway, the states would be Montana, Idaho, where I currently live, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. The Rocky Mountains go through mostly all of these states. And the population would be only 22.8 million, based on the 2025 estimate. I would put the national capital in Denver, which makes sense because it's a very liberal, progressive city, and it would keep the red states in check. The area size would be 753,000 square feet. The GDP would be 1.8 trillion. The agriculture would probably be the biggest economic sector because if you've been, Idaho grows a lot of food, not just potatoes. That's their biggest crop. But there's agriculture in all of these states. Energy is pretty big here. And, we got a lot of energy companies, and there's mining. Tourism would be a big thing because of the national parks. There's Glacier National Park in Montana. There's the Grand Canyon in Arizona. There's, what's it called? There's Yellowstone, mostly in Wyoming. There's Zion, Bryce. There's a lot of beautiful national parks here. Medicine. Oh, also there's a lot of skiing, of course, in Colorado. Anyway, medicine, of course, there's a lot of medical companies. Manufacturing would also be pretty good size. So we'd have a pretty good, decent economy. So there's stuff here. The next country in question would be the Neo-Confederacy. Yeah, you heard me. The Neo-Confederacy. Of course, I would hope that it would not be like the old Confederacy. They would tone down the racism. Of course, I'm just joking. I mean, the South is very diverse, especially in the more populous areas. Anyway, the states that make up the Neo-Confederacy would be Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky, and both North and South Carolina. And of course, Kentucky is kind of like the odd state out. Anyway, the population it would actually be the biggest of these new countries in population and probably area and oddly enough GDP. The population would be over 107.9 million. I would put the capital in Atlanta. Atlanta, I mean, Georgia's not totally, liberal or conservative, but Atlanta is pretty liberal. So yeah, you got to keep. Then you get the idea. Anyway, the area size would be over 767,000 square feet. The GDP would be 8.5 trillion roughly. And the economic sectors, agriculture, of course, is still very big. I mean, they grow a lot of crops in the South. Peaches in Georgia, tobacco in the Carolinas. And energy is very big, of course. You got all the oil companies in Texas. And technology, there's a lot of tech companies in the South, especially in the Austin area and the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Finance, there's a Bank of America is based in North Carolina, in Charlotte. There's other banks in the area. Tourism, I don't know if a lot of people would be coming from around the world, but maybe. Tourism, entertainment is also, I should have put that ahead of mining, but yeah, because you got Orlando has Disney World and Universal Studios, and yeah, you get the idea. Mining, yes, mining is big in the South, especially near Kentucky and Tennessee and those places. So, yeah, it would have a pretty good size economy. And again, hopefully they could tone down some of the bad stuff associated with the South. The next country in question would be, we would go a little north to what I call the Iroquois Republic. I call it that because the states in this country would be Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. And these mostly border the Great Lakes. And the Iroquois historically were in this area until the colonization of the states. Anyway, the population would be over almost 63 million. I put the capital in Chicago. I know a lot of people hit on what's the word I'm looking for? Or pick on Chicago a lot, but I think it would be fine as a national capital, and would keep Missouri and Indiana and Iowa in check. I mean, yeah, you're saying, why do the red states have to be in check? They just do, so they don't become MAGAfied again. Anyway, the area size is over 514,000 square feet. The GDP would be about $5 trillion, as you can see there. Economic sectors, manufacturing. You've got still a lot of manufacturing in that area, though not as much as before. I mean, the auto industry is in the Detroit area. Finance, there's a lot of, Chicago has banks there. Education would be big there. Medicine would be big there. I forget if any of the major health insurance companies and medicine companies are based there. I'm not sure. I have to look this up. Tourism, Chicago would be pretty popular. Agriculture, of course, energy. So yeah, it would be a pretty good sized economy. Next, we go to the United States of New England. I know that's a kind of a misnomer that I would have the New England states paired with New York and all the rest of them, but I think it would work. Anyway, the states would be Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, the 6 New England states, along with New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. These are actually this is all the area that was part of the original 13 colonies in the United States when it was formed in 1776, save for the South, which I gave to another country. Anyway, the population would be over 76 million. I would keep the capital in Washington. However, I would basically abolish the District of Columbia and give the land back to Maryland. Because Maryland and Virginia actually gave land to form the district. But although Virginia Virginia was given back their portion, and now it's in Maryland. So Maryland would be Washington, Maryland. Area size would be over 263,000 square feet. GDP would be over $7 trillion. Economic sectors, finance, of course, New York City is the biggest stock market in the world. Government, of course, education, because the Ivy League is based in that area, and you got Harvard University, you've got Columbia, you've got some of the most prestigious colleges and universities in the world are in the Northeast and New England. Tourism, of course, New York City gets a lot of tourism. Boston, D.C. Entertainment, New York City, of course, is one of the biggest media hubs in the world. Agriculture is still pretty big there. Mining in the Virginias. Energy, medicine, yes. So it would have a very robust economy. And finally, the last one would be what I call the Federation of Tatanka. Tatanka means buffalo in Lakota. And the Lakota are historically indigenous to this part. The states would include the Dakotas, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas. This would it would be the smallest of the new nations, with a population of only 6.5 million. The national capital would be Wichita, Kansas. The area size would be over 307,000 square feet. The GDP, it would have the smallest GDP, actually, of all these new nations. They have only $570.6 billion. Economic sectors, of course, agriculture is one of the biggest ones. Energy, I mean, yes, they have a lot of mining and manufacturing. Energy, I mean, there's a lot of oil drilling in that area, so they would have to rely on trade they probably have to rely on trade with some of these other new nations, and hopefully Canada, if they're willing to. So basically that's it. Those are the new nations.
Anyway, that's my idea on how I would effectively balkanize the United States. If you have any ideas how you'd like to see the U.S. split into smaller nations, let me know in the comments below. Remember to like the video, subscribe to my channel for more, and follow me on SpaceHey. I plan to make more videos soon and branch out into more stuff besides just game shows. I might talk about history, I might talk about, fun, try and be a little nerdy. Actually nerdy. I suck at math, though. I may even do a live stream of me watching old TV shows and movies if I can get away with it. Until then, I'm Marty1983, and I'm logging out of the nerd nest.